Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the ayes are 24, the nays are 19.
The ayes have it, and the motion is, the amendment is adopted.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I have an amendment at the desk.
Chair recognizes Ms. Luna.
Has it been distributed?
Will the clerk please report the amendment?
I'll reserve a point of order, Mr. Chairman.
But before the clerk wrote, you have a point of order, Mr.
Just reserving it.
Okay, reserve it. Clerk, please report the amendment.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to the contempt report as offered by Ms. Luna of Florida.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I reserve a point of order. The gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Luna, is recognized for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
I wanted to offer this amendment because I, like so many Americans, have frankly lost faith in the justice system. And there was some comments made earlier by my colleague, Mr. Goldman, who I actually very much so enjoyed debating with on this committee. But he said that oversight did not have authority in regards to contempt proceedings. And during my time off for maternity, after I was told that I could not vote, I actually spent that time reading the House Rule Book and Manual. And there's something that hasn't been used since the early 1900s called inherent contempt of Congress. It's actually something that any one individual member reserves as their right and authority in the House of Representatives. And the reason why we're here today is because the Attorney General thought he was above the law and did not comply not just with one subpoena, but with 2 subpoenas. Those are subpoenas from both Chairman Jordan and Chairman Comer. I want to read this to you because ultimately, if in 10 days the Department of Justice does not do their job and hold the Attorney General responsible, just like they would any other American, I think that it should be our job in the House of Representatives to bring an inherent contempt proceeding against the Attorney General, of which I've already filed that privilege motion over a week ago. And so, although I realize that my Democrat colleagues might have an issue with this, and I'm willing to retract the amendment, I would like to read it real quickly in saying that resolved that if in 10 days after the passage of this report, the Department of Justice had failed to indict Attorney General Garland, the Speaker of the House of Representatives shall issue his warrant commanding the Sergeant-at-Arms or his duty to take into custody the body of the said Attorney General Garland, wherever found, and bring him to the said Attorney General Garland before the bar of the House of Representatives, then and there to provide documents, materials, and answer such questions pertinent to the matter under inquiry as the House of Representatives may order the Speaker of the House of Representatives to propound and to keep the said Attorney General Garland in custody to await further orders of the House of Representatives. This is something that we reserve as an authority in order to bring back order to a House that has seemed to have forgotten it. And so with that, Chairman, I just wanted to let you all know, as my colleagues, because I'm sure we will debate this on the floor, I fully intend in 10 days after this passes out of committee to hold Attorney General Garland in inherent contempt of Congress if the Department of Justice does not do their job. And with that, Chairman, I'm going to withdraw my amendment, and thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question on this.
I thank the lady for withdrawing, for raising this issue, and please note that she withdrew her amendment. Now, I understand. Okay, we're going to suspend for 1 moment.
You got to give us a ballpark. Yeah, I mean, you need to tell us what
Okay. The committee will reconvene. I understand, Mr. Goldman, you have an amendment.
I do, Mr.
Will the clerk please report?
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to the contempt report as offered by Mr. Goldman of New York.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I reserve a point of order. The gentleman from New York is recognized for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment details and enumerates exactly what the subpoena requested and exactly what the Department of Justice has done in response to that subpoena. And I will summarize that the subpoena of February 12th requested all documents and communications, including audio and video recordings, related to the special counsel's interview of President Biden, as well as the special counsel's interview of Mark Zwanitzer, who is the ghostwriter of President Biden's book or books. 3, the documents identified as A9 and A10 in Appendix A of Mr. Hur's report. And 4, all communications between or among representatives of the Department of Justice, including the Office of Special Counsel, the Executive Office of the President, and President Biden's personal counsel referring or relating to Mr. Hur's report. Obviously, it goes almost without saying that that last request is completely improper, would be deliberative process and executive privilege, although I don't think they determined executive privilege, but there is no basis for Congress to get internal communications within the Department of Justice about decisions they have made. And if you have any question about that, you should go refer back to your favorite former president and his administration, where they use that repeatedly. In response to the subpoena, the special counsel, or rather the Department of Justice, provided the unredacted report, as you know, the transcripts of the interviews of President Biden and Mr. Zwanitzer, provided the documents identified as A9 and A10. So really the only thing that could even be considered as a legitimate request that the Department of Justice withheld is the audio recording of the 2 interviews, about which there already is a transcript. And so the question that this amendment begs is, if the majority thinks that giving substantially the entire subpoena response, responding with substantially everything that the subpoena asks for warrants contempt of Congress, what does the majority think about somebody who, I don't know, refuses to respond to a subpoena altogether? Maybe Chairman Jordan has a response to that? Mr. Biggs? Mr. Perry? Because I'm pretty sure that they each received duly authorized subpoenas, and I appreciate that the gentle
Would the gentleman yield?
Georgia, in 1 sec, I will. I
You
appreciate
asked
that
me to respond.
the gentle lady, I will, 1 second. The gentle lady from Georgia, with her esteemed legal knowledge, determined that the January 6th committee was not a legitimate committee, when unfortunately a number of actual courts of law determined that it was. So those subpoenas to members of Congress were duly authorized subpoenas. And if Merrick Garland is going to be held in contempt and is going to be threatened with inherent contempt and sent to a non-existent jail in the basement of the Congress, then what is going to happen to those witnesses who just outright defy congressional subpoenas? Because I do think the majority ought to be careful about the precedent that it sets, because, Ms. Luna, I am happy to reinstitute right now with you inherent contempt. And I can assure you that when you consult with the rest of your party, nobody will want it, because it will be much, much worse for you than for the Democrats.
Will the gentleman yield?
I'm happy to yield, yes.
I'd just like to point out that inherent contempt or contempt, as to my understanding, can't be brought forward in a new Congress, even if it's been a past violation. I know because I actually inquired on Cohen today.
Oh,
So
yeah,
just
no,
so
no,
you're
I'm,
aware.
I'm not suggesting that we bring
I'm
inherent
just-
contempt
just to
for
clarify.
any past subpoenas. I'm talking about the precedent that you are
Are you,
setting.
are you now willing
Like
to yield,
set.
Mr.
Biggs? Yes, of course.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you for yielding to me. First of all, you made a personal reference again to Mr. Jordan, about myself, and about Mr. Perry, which we had agreed that we wouldn't do. But I'm going to respond to you. We asserted that we had not received service. And
Okay.
that's how we
So
responded.
your
So,
response
end of
is that you
story.
didn't receive service of the subpoena. I just want to be clear. That's why you didn't comply?
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentleman's time's expired.
I thought so. I'll yield.
Do any other members wish to speak on the Goldman amendment? Mr. Chair recognizes Mr. Fry from South Carolina for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I oppose this amendment by Mr. Goldman. Mr. Goldman's amendment is just an attempt to distract from the very obvious and clear fact that the Attorney General has failed to comply with a duly issued subpoena. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the District Court has stated that the level of grave accusations that a president may have committed treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors, the House must be appropriately informed. Mr. Goldman's amendment completely ignores the fact that audio recordings, as he knows as a lawyer, are material to understanding the full context of President Biden's mishandling of classified documents, his credibility as a witness, and his fitness to serve as President of the United States. Quite simply, the Attorney General has not complied with 2 subpoenas. Mr. Goldman's amendment completely distracts from that obvious fact. And I'll remind my colleagues that a subpoena is not a menu. It's not an a la carte menu that you can choose what you comply with or not. You either produce the requested materials or you don't. And when Mr. Goldman was with the Department of Justice, he probably didn't allow criminal defendants to pick and choose what subpoenas they were going to comply with. And so it just simply put, this amendment is just about helping President Biden hide in a basement, but by other means.
Will the gentleman yield?
No, sir.
Gentlemen, time's expired. Or yielded back. Do any other members speak? Mr. Conley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The gentleman from South Carolina just implied, more than implied, that there's evidence the President of the United States committed high crimes and misdemeanors. Her report finds otherwise. He, in fact, found no grounds for proceeding. That may be an unpleasant fact, but it is a fact. In addition, there is no committee in this Congress that has found the President of the United States guilty of high crimes or misdemeanors, nor is the President currently the subject of the charge that he is guilty of high crimes and misdemeanors. So if we're going to take care in invoking President's names and characterizing them, their circumstances, or their legal standing, let's at least stick to the facts. I yield back.
No, Mr.
Will the gentleman yield?
I'm sorry, I yield first to the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Conley. And I want to further clarify this issue for our colleague, because I did have some familiarity with these contempt motions. Now, when the January 6th committee, whose legality and constitutionality was repeatedly upheld by the D.C. Circuit and no court ever rejected it, issued subpoenas and requests to testify, hundreds of people cooperated. More than 900 people did what the vast majority of Americans do. You get a subpoena, you go, and you testify. If you get a subpoena for documents, you turn over the documents. There was a tiny handful of people who blew off the subpoenas. Some of them claimed to be invoking executive privilege even when Donald Trump didn't invoke executive privilege. Some of them were not even working for the government when they purported to invoke executive privilege. And they were referred for contempt motions and voted that way. And then prosecutions were brought only against those people who categorically didn't participate. I'll give you an example of someone who kind of did the hokey pokey. He was sort of in and sort of out. And that was Paul Manafort. And he participated some and then some not. There were some other witnesses who were kind of, Mark Meadows, that's who I'm thinking of. Mark Meadows is the one who turned over a whole bunch of stuff, and then we understand Donald Trump wasn't pleased and he stopped cooperating, but he was never held for contempt because he had at least partially complied, okay? So now you're talking about the Attorney General of the United States, who's invoked executive privilege for one very small part of the overall subpoena, but has materially, substantially, and overwhelmingly complied in this case by turning over the entire document that was subpoenaed, which was the president's testimony. And now people are talking about invoking the inherent power of contempt of Congress, which hasn't been used in more than a century, to go and arrest him because you didn't get the audio tape.
Will the gentleman yield, please?
For a quick question, sure.
Actually, it's my time,
Oh, I'm sorry.
and I yield to the ranking member.
Thank you. All right, well, just to complete
Will the
my,
gentleman yield
I'll
for
just
a
complete my
question?
point, and I'll yield back to the very distinguished gentleman from Virginia. So I think that our colleagues should really think about what they're talking about here. You understand that when he was president, Donald Trump invoked executive privilege and cut off all cooperation with legislative committees in more than 100 cases. You're saying he could have been arrested 100 times and thrown into jail. And don't bury your faces in your phones. I mean, I just want you to follow the principle of your argument that Congress can throw anyone in jail if
Will
there's...
the gentleman yield?
Well, I'll yield back to my distinguished...
I would yield to the gentlelady, yes.
I think the whole point of this, and this is not tit for tat, this is a very serious thing in that Congress used to be respected, and we are no longer respected because people do not respect our authority. And so the inherent contempt clause, I'm not hoping that he's thrown in jail. What I'm saying is that he's violated a law, something that we have as a privilege, and as a result of that, any other American would be in trouble or in jail because of it. And so,
Reclaiming my time, I want the gentlelady to know that on the principle of inherent contempt, I actually agree. I believe that the courts are too slow in enforcing congressional subpoenas, and therefore the work of the legislative body is impeded. But that begs the question of whether there are serious grounds in which to bring a contempt citation.
Will
And
the
if we're going
gentleman
to use that power, we'd better use it very carefully and thoughtfully. And I do not believe this proceeding against Merrick Garland meets that criteria. But thank you for the point.
Gentlemen, time's expired. Chair now recognizes Mr. Jordan for 5 minutes.
I think the chair, independent and impartial, that's what they told us. Attorney General of the United States says we will administer justice in an impartial fashion. The White House said we'll let the Justice Department operate in an independent fashion. The key question for this committee, the key question for the Judiciary Committee earlier today was the decision not to prosecute President Biden consistent with that commitment that President Biden and Attorney General Garland gave the country? It's a key question for the Congress when we're doing our oversight. Trump was charged, Biden wasn't. We know that's the case. Was their commitment to impartiality and independence, was that what was actually going on? Particularly when you look at what Robert Hur found. Page 1 of his report. Our investigation uncovered evidence that President Biden willfully retained, willfully disclosed classified materials after his vice presidency when he was a private citizen. So he met the elements of the crime. He kept information he wasn't allowed to keep. He shared information he wasn't allowed to share. Now, why would he do that? Well, guess what? Robert Hur told us that too. Page 231 of the report. He says it right here. Mr. Biden had strong motivations to ignore the proper procedures for safeguarding classified material. He had decided months before to write a book. So he had motive. The motive was the book he wrote, for which he got paid, by the way, $8 million in advance. So he had an $8 million motive. He met the elements of the crime, but he's not being charged. And one of the things we have to evaluate as a Congress, the legislative branches, are they administering justice in a fair and equal fashion? It's a fair question. And the best way to determine that is to get all the evidence and the best evidence. The best evidence, the purest evidence, would be the audio tape. The transcript's great. I would argue he's already waived privilege when he gave us the transcript. But we want the audio tape because that's the best evidence. That's the best evidence we can have as the body who's supposed to do oversight. It's part of our constitutional duty. In order to do that, we should get the best. That is the simple question. We can get all the other fights we get into in Congress. God bless us, that's how it goes. But to me, that's the fundamental question. The elements of the crime were met, both of them. He knowingly, and by the way, he knew the rules. He'd only been in government 50 years, chaired the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Vice President of the United States, getting a daily briefing, intelligence briefing all the time. He knew the rules, didn't follow them, shared them with the ghostwriter, did it for $8 million, but wasn't charged. Why? Why? Because Mr. Hur said he's forgetful elderly gentleman. That's what he told us. So we want to evaluate it all. And the best way to do that is to get all the evidence. That's all this is about, plain and simple. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes Ms. Stansberry from New Mexico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make some points for the record on this amendment and on this proceeding this evening. And I want to start off by first saying to my colleagues across the aisle, welcome back to Washington, D.C. I know it's late, and I know a bunch of you have been traveling. You are on the road today, and I know you must be tired. You all were visiting Donald Trump's trial today to defend his porn star hush money case. And in fact, we have some cute pictures of you here today, and they are some cute pictures, so congratulations, and also some from the last few days. And it looks like you guys had a good time in the courtroom today, but you know what? I don't know, the speaker looks a little bit stressed here. I mean, it's a lot, right, to ask someone who's facing a criminal trial and running for president to ask his political allies to travel over 200 miles on a voting day here in Congress to pop up to New York and snap some cute pictures to defend him because the judge has ordered him to stop threatening the jurors in his own trial. I mean, some might actually view this as direct interference in a criminal court case. It's not exactly law and order, as our friends like to talk about all the time. But I want to just take a moment to let you all know what you missed today while you were up in New York. You missed some votes. Yeah, you weren't here. You didn't show up for votes. You didn't vote on some of the bills that you claimed were your priorities, some of your public safety and border bills. I mean, I can see you had some important business to take care of here today. And as the ranking member noted, the chairman did manage to find time today after they canceled the hearing this morning to have his political fundraising team send out this fundraising email. And I do genuinely hope you made some good money off of it because, you know, we're not actually supposed to use the resources that the taxpayers fund in this committee to fundraise off of. But it does really make you wonder why we're sitting here at 10:30 at night after this is the activities that the GOP were engaged in earlier today when we were supposed to be having this hearing. These fundraising emails went out. Why are we here? Why are we using taxpayer official resources in this committee right now? I mean, could it be political? I mean, it would make sense why you guys rescheduled and skipped votes and went up to New York, and here we are. And if there's any indication that this impeachment scheme is in its flop era, I mean, I don't know what is. This committee has spent 17 months reviewing 3.8 million pages of documents. 3.8 million pages of documents, 80 hours of recorded testimony, and not turned up a single shred of evidence in this impeachment scheme. And yet you still had time to go to Donald Trump's trial where he's about to be convicted. And so, you know, I think it's very clear what all of this is about. The GOP is using this committee and its resources to make countless misleading and false statements to try to spin a political narrative, to fundraise off of it in a blatantly partisan effort to support Donald Trump's reelection. And I mean, if you need any evidence, it's right here behind me. So I thought it was important to really set the record straight on this. This is not a taxpayer-funded campaign effort. And if you needed any evidence that that is what the majority is involved in here, I think it's very clear that that is what this hearing is all about, or we wouldn't be sitting here at 10:30 at night after your little field trip. And with that, I yield back.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Biggs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this hearing started off tonight with a crazy satire, and with the condescending presentation we just received, it just continues and perpetuates. So I'm glad we actually had an agreement that we were going to tone it down. This is why you can't. It's tough to make deals with my colleagues across the aisle.
All right.
They condescend, they call out individuals, and they don't go to the issues. That's why it's tough, folks. That's why it's tough, and you wonder why. But here, let's take a look at a few things here. It wasn't that the special counsel Hur did not find that criminal activity had taken place. As Mr. Jordan just pointed out on page 2, we found out that the President Biden, when he was after he left the vice presidency, he unlawfully retained and disclosed classified information. But he wasn't prosecuted. That's what you guys conflate that. He wasn't charged, and you say, "Oh, see, he didn't do anything wrong." No, that's not true. He did something wrong, but Mr. Hur made a prosecutorial decision. He said, "Well, you know, this is a feeble old man with a poor memory, and you know what? Going to be tough to actually convict." Now, the Attorney General has received a subpoena, and this amendment by the gentleman from New York basically says, including audio and video recordings. And we're told, gee, if he substantially complied, whoop, that's great, that's all you have to do. But we actually had a great example earlier this evening why you just might want to have the oral transcript. You just might want to have that oral audio recording. What was it? You remember? Nobody could successfully identify and isolate and remember what Ms. Greene said exactly. And so we went to there, and the comment was, well, the best that we could determine. But you know what might have helped? An audio recording. And that's why an audio recording becomes valuable in this particular case as well. Now, yes, the best evidence, the original evidence. Now, the President Biden has now asserted executive privilege, which is no longer available to him because he waived executive privilege when he actually provided the written transcript. He also went way past the deadline. He should have, when the subpoena was due, that's when he should have made that assertion. He chose not to, and that's part of his problem. And then I think of the Mitchell case. And if you remember the U.S. v. Mitchell case, President Nixon was trying to get by with turning over what? Some part of the written transcript. This is the written transcript. This is what you should have. And the U.S. Supreme Court said, no, turn over the audio recordings. That's what happened in the U.S. v. Mitchell case. Next thing here, when we get to the jurisdiction, oh, my goodness gracious, we don't have jurisdiction. Actually, we do. Rule 10.4 C2, take a look at that. In addition to its duties under subparagraph 1, the Committee on Oversight and Accountability may at any time conduct investigations of any matter without regard to clause 1, 2, 3 of this clause, conferring jurisdiction over the matter to another standing committee. That means we can have jurisdiction over darn near anything. And we've claimed jurisdiction. That means we can go forward with it. What else you got? Let's see here. Oh, goodness gracious, it was late. It's late. Why are we here? It's late. You know why it's late? You know why we're here? Because the time for this hearing was set for 8 p.m. Properly noticed. That is all right. And you know what? I've actually been in committees that have started late after votes when the Democrats had control. And we went through to midnight, 1, 2 in the morning, when Democrats were sitting in the chair. That's so, I don't feel bad about that. So what you have here is the Democrats conflating executive privilege as well as the contempt. But the issue that they fail to understand is that the full compliance of the subpoena required disclosure of the audio recordings. It's right here in this proposed amendment. So what would happen if you had a deposition and you did both a video recording and a written transcript? Do you think the court's going to say, hey, look, you can have one but not the other? No, that's probably not going to happen. Time's expired.
Time's expired. I think Ms. Crockett seeks recognition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do want to make sure that we point out some obvious differences in what the majority is talking about. Number one, we're talking about an interview that was voluntarily done by the sitting president of the United States versus someone who is obstructed at every angle. In fact, is continually obstructing to the extent that we are waiting on the Supreme Court to give us a ruling on whether or not it's okay for him to commit his crimes while sitting in the Oval Office and be excused for them. So we've got trials all over the place that are on hold because of the continual obstruction. The difference in the documents case between the former president and the current president could not be any clearer. We absolutely didn't have mounds of documents sitting in someone's bathroom versus some that had been stored in a garage. But also it's this level of voluntariness. And so for those that aren't lawyers in the room, typically we look to something that's called mens rea. And mens rea is always talking about a level of intent, and there are various levels of intent. And so while someone may be negligent, that may not necessarily rise to the level of criminality. But when someone is being intentional by making sure that they get rid of the video footage, they lie to their lawyers, they lie to those officials that are coming and inquiring of them, that is why you then end up facing criminal charges. But I also just want to make it clear, because it seems like when we talk about conflating, that those in this legislative body really want to be more so on the judiciary side of things. They really sound like they want to enforce various things. They want to enforce the law. They want to somehow decide over what has already been decided, that the President of the United States should be charged with a crime, and I guess somehow they're going to figure out a way to charge the President. But I do want to remind this committee and the chairman that since since day one of the 118th Congress, which is now over 17 months, the majority has wasted the committee's resources, time, and quite frankly, the sanity of members and staff on a sham impeachment investigation that has failed to produce one legitimate piece of evidence of wrongdoing by President Biden. And the quote-unquote evidence our chair and majority used as its basis to try to impeach the president was the FD 1023 form that is since found to have information from an individual who was fed lies by Russian assets. Now, I know the chairman and the majority on this committee know how to read, and so, in fact, we heard from a member that she's read through all the rules. So I'm not really sure why reading this transcript is so difficult, but members and staff on both sides of the aisle have combed through over 3.8 million pages of documents and 80 hours of testimony for nearly 20 witnesses, scouring all of this material to try to find any evidence of wrongdoing by President Biden. But lo and behold, there never was any, because there clearly is none. Because if there was, our chairman would have moved forward with a vote to impeach in this committee. The American people want the truth, and the truth is that every member on this committee has access to the 250 pages of transcript of what the president said during his voluntary sit-down for questioning with the special counsel. But maybe my colleagues on the other side of the aisle simply want the audiobook version of the transcript because they have nothing better to do than to listen to it on repeat on their train ride to and from Trump's criminal trial and Veep's stakes tryouts. By the way, we love the matching red ties.
Will the gentlelady yield?
I will yield.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to make a point in answer to the distinguished chairman of the Judiciary Committee. The special counsel in this case on page 97 says, and I quote, "The published book is not known to contain classified information." Special counsel was very clear that President Biden did not retain or use classified documents in order to sell his book. And you might not like the conclusions of the special counsel, who was a Republican appointed by President Trump, but those were his conclusions. And either you stand by the rule of law or you don't stand by the rule of law. And all of us have the transcript to read, and all of it bears that out. There was no intention by President Biden to exploit any classified documents. I yield back.
Gentlelady's time's expired. Chair recognizes Mr. LaTurner from Kansas.
Mr. Chairman, I move the previous question.
Motion to move to previous question.
I object.
I second the motion.
Motion and second. It's non-debatable. And all those in favor?
All right, let's have a recorded vote if we could, Mr.
Motion is not debatable. Shall the main question be now put? Those in favor of moving to previous question signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The previous question is ordered.
I'd like a recorded vote if we could, Mr. Chairman.
A recorded vote is ordered. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Jordan. Mr. Turner. Mr. Gosar. Mr. Gosar votes yes. Ms. Fox. Mr. Grothman. Mr. Grothman votes yes. Mr. Cloud. Mr. Cloud votes yes. Mr. Palmer. Mr. Palmer votes aye. Mr. Higgins. Mr. Sessions. Mr. Sessions votes aye. Mr. Biggs. Mr. Biggs votes aye. Ms. Mace. Ms. Mace votes aye. Mr. LaTurner. Mr. LaTurner votes aye. Mr. Fallon. Mr. Fallon votes aye. Mr. Donalds. Mr. Donalds votes yes. Mr. Perry. Mr. Perry votes aye. Mr. Timmons. Mr. Timmons votes aye. Mr. Burchett. Mr. Burchett votes aye. Ms. Green. Ms. Green votes aye. Ms. McLean. Ms. Boebert. Ms. Boebert votes aye. Mr. Fry. Mr. Fry votes aye. Ms. Luna. Ms. Luna votes aye. Mr. Langworthy. Mr. Langworthy votes aye. Mr. Burleson. Mr. Burleson votes aye. Mr. Waltz. Mr. Raskin.
Mr. Chairman, to be clear, this is a motion on the previous question to cut off all debate and all amendments. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. And including the pending amendment or no?
Pending amendment.
So we would vote on the pending amendment or we would not?
Yes, we'll vote on the pending amendment.
Okay. My vote is no. I've never seen this done in this committee in 8 years by either the Democrats or the Republicans. I vote no on the motion, the previous question. No.
Mr. Raskin votes no. Ms. Norton.
No.
Ms. Norton votes no. Mr. Lynch.
No.
Mr. Lynch votes no. Mr. Connolly.
Nay.
Mr. Connolly votes nay. Mr. Krishnamurthy. Mr. Khanna. Mr. Mfume.
No.
Mr. Mfume votes no. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
No.
Ms. Ocasio-Cortez votes no. Ms. Porter.
No.
Ms. Porter votes no. Ms. Bush. Ms. Brown. Ms. Brown votes no. Ms. Stansbury. Ms. Stansbury votes no. Mr. Garcia. Mr. Garcia votes no. Mr. Frost. Mr. Frost votes no. Ms. Lee. No. Ms. Lee votes no. Mr. Kassar. Mr. Kassar votes no. Ms. Crockett.
No.
Ms. Crockett votes no. Mr. Goldman. Mr. Goldman votes no. Mr. Moskowitz. Mr. Moskowitz votes no. Ms. Tlaib. Ms. Tlaib votes no. Ms. Presley. Ms. Presley votes no. Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman votes yes.
How is Mr. Waltz recorded?
Mr. Waltz is not recorded. Mr. Waltz votes yes.
How is Dr. Fox recorded?
Ms. Fox is not recorded.
And how
Fox
is
votes yes.
Mr. Krishnamurti recorded?
Mr. Krishnamurti is not recorded.
No.
Mr. Krishnamurti votes no.
How is Mr. Higgins recorded?
Mr. Higgins is not recorded. Mr. Higgins votes yes.
Have all members been recorded?
Mr. Chairman, would you just explain why you invoked that? Because that hasn't happened in 70 years in this committee.
Will the clerk please report?
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the ayes are 23, the nays are 19.
The move to previous question passes. The question is now on the pending amendment from Mr. Goldman. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it, and the amendment is not agreed to.
Request recorded vote.
A request for recorded vote has been requested. Will the clerk please call the roll? This is on the Goldman amendment.
Mr. Jordan. Mr. Turner. Mr. Gosar. Mr. Gosar votes no. Ms. Fox. Ms. Fox votes no. Mr. Grothman. Mr. Grothman votes no. Mr. Cloud. Mr. Cloud votes no. Mr. Palmer. Mr. Palmer votes nay. Mr. Higgins. Mr. Higgins votes no. Mr. Sessions. Mr. Sessions votes no. Mr. Biggs. Mr. Biggs votes no. Ms. Mace. Ms. Mace votes no. Mr. LaTurner.
That's good for you.
Mr. LaTurner votes no. Mr. Fallon. Mr. Fallon votes no. Mr. Donalds. Mr. Donalds votes no. Mr. Perry. Mr. Perry votes nay. Mr. Timmons. Mr. Timmons votes no. Mr. Burchett.
I could have predicted that. Anyway,
Whose name were you on?
Mr. Burchett.
Mr. Burchett.
Mr. Burchett votes no. Ms. Green.
oh, really? Yeah.
Ms. Green votes no. Ms. McLean.
What did they say?
Ms. Boebert.
Are you an APAC guy or what?
Ms. Boebert
J Street?
votes no.
And that is
Mr. Fry.
So here I am paying a price for my support for
Mr. Fry votes no. Ms. Luna.
I will insist on condemning Hamas.
Ms. Luna votes no. Mr. Langworthy.
Right. Saying the right thing.
Mr. Langworthy votes no. Mr. Burleson. Mr. Burleson votes no. Mr. Waltz. Mr. Waltz votes no. Mr. Raskin.
Aye.
Mr. Raskin votes aye. Ms. Norton.
Yes.
Ms. Norton votes yes. Mr. Lynch. Mr. Lynch votes aye. Mr. Connolly.
Aye.
Mr. Connolly votes aye. Mr. Krishnamurthy.
Aye.
Mr. Krishnamurthy votes aye. Mr. Khanna. Mr. Mfume.
Aye.
Mr. Mfume votes aye. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
Aye.
Ms. Ocasio-Cortez votes aye. Ms. Porter.
Aye.
Ms. Porter votes aye. Ms. Bush. Ms. Brown. Ms. Brown votes yes. Ms. Stansbury. Ms. Stansbury votes yes. Mr. Garcia. Mr. Garcia votes yes. Mr. Frost. Mr. Frost votes yes. Ms. Lee. Ms. Lee votes yes. Mr. Kassar. Mr. Kassar votes yes. Ms. Crockett. Ms. Crockett votes yes. Mr. Goldman. Mr. Goldman votes yea. Mr. Moskowitz. Mr. Moskowitz votes yes. Ms. Tlaib. Ms. Tlaib votes yes. Ms. Presley. Ms. Presley votes yes. Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman votes no.
Has Mr. Perry been recorded?
Mr. Perry is recorded as no.
Have any other members that not been recorded? Seeing none, will the clerk report the tally?
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the ayes are 19, the nays are 23.
The Goldman amendment fails. The question is now on the amendment in the nature of a substitute to the report. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment in the nature of a substitute to the report is agreed to.
Recorded vote.
Now, on the ANS? Yeah. Okay.
But we're not allowed to bring in any other amendments.
Well, we've had deals that have you all.
It hasn't happened
you
in
have
70
not-
years,
you-
Mr.
you
Chairman.
have-
70
you
years.
have- we have tried to negotiate with you, and you've not done it. A recorded vote is ordered on the ANS. Will the clerk please report?
Mr. Jordan.
It's.
Mr. Turner.
I don't know, but they say we can't. So.
Mr. Gosar. Mr. Gosar votes yes. Ms. Fox. Ms. Fox votes yes. Mr. Grothman. Mr. Grothman votes yes. Mr. Cloud. Mr. Cloud votes yes. Mr. Palmer. Mr. Palmer votes aye. Mr. Higgins. Mr. Higgins votes yes. Mr. Sessions. Mr. Sessions votes aye. Mr. Biggs. Mr. Biggs votes yes. Ms. Mace. Ms. Mace votes yes. Mr. LaTurner. Mr. LaTurner votes yes. Mr. Fallon. Mr. Fallon votes yes. Mr. Donalds. Mr. Donalds votes yes. Mr. Perry. Mr. Perry votes yes. Mr. Timmons. Mr. Timmons votes yes. Mr. Burchett. Mr. Burchett votes aye. Ms. Green. Ms. Green votes aye. Ms. McLean. Ms. Boebert. Ms. Boebert votes aye. Mr. Fry. Mr. Fry votes aye. Ms. Luna. Ms. Luna votes aye. Mr. Langworthy. Mr. Langworthy votes aye. Mr. Burleson. Mr. Burleson votes aye. Mr. Waltz. Mr. Waltz votes aye. Mr. Raskin.
No.
Mr. Raskin votes no. Ms. Norton.
No.
Ms. Norton votes no. Mr. Lynch. Mr. Lynch votes no. Mr. Connolly.
Nay.
Mr. Connolly votes nay. Mr. Krishnamurthy. Mr. Krishnamurthy votes nay. Mr. Khanna. Mr. Mfume.
No.
Mr. Mfume votes no. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
No.
Ms. Ocasio-Cortez votes no. Ms. Porter.
No.
Ms. Porter votes no. Ms. Bush. Ms. Brown. Ms. Brown votes no. Ms. Stansbury. Ms. Stansbury votes no. Mr. Garcia. Mr. Garcia votes no. Mr. Frost. Mr. Frost votes no. Ms. Lee. Ms. Lee votes no. Mr. Kassar. Mr. Kassar votes no. Ms. Crockett. Ms. Crockett votes no. Mr. Goldman. Mr. Goldman votes no. Mr. Moskowitz. Mr. Moskowitz votes no. Ms. Tlaib. Ms. Tlaib votes no. Ms. Presley. Ms. Presley votes no. Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman votes yes.
Have any members failed to vote? Seeing none, will the clerk please report the tally?
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the ayes are 23, the nays are 19.
The ayes have it. The motion is passed. The question is now on favorably reporting the report. Members will record their vote. We do the electronic. Okay, the clerk will call the roll. So last vote.
Mr. Jordan. Mr. Jordan votes yes. Mr. Turner. Mr. Gosar. Mr. Gosar votes yes. Ms. Fox. Ms. Fox votes yes. Mr. Grothman. Mr. Grothman votes yes. Mr. Cloud. Mr. Cloud votes yes. Mr. Palmer. Mr. Palmer votes aye. Mr. Higgins. Mr. Higgins votes yes. Mr. Sessions. Mr. Sessions votes yes. Mr. Biggs. Ms. Mace. I'm sorry, Mr. Biggs. Mr. Biggs? Mr. Biggs votes yes. Ms. Mace? Ms. Mace votes yes. Mr. LaTurner? Mr. LaTurner votes yes. Mr. Fallon? Mr. Fallon votes aye. Mr. Donalds? Mr. Donalds votes yes. Mr. Perry? Mr. Perry votes yes. Mr. Timmons? Mr. Timmons votes yes. Mr. Burchett? Mr. Burchett votes yes. Ms. Green? Ms. Green votes yes. Ms. McLean? Ms. Boebert? Ms. Boebert votes yes. Mr. Fry? Mr. Fry? Mr. Fry votes yes. Ms. Luna? Ms. Luna? Ms. Luna votes yes. Mr. Langworthy? Mr. Langworthy votes yes. Mr. Burleson? Mr. Burleson votes yes. Mr. Waltz? Mr. Waltz votes yes. Mr. Raskin?
No.
Mr. Raskin votes no. Ms. Norton?
No.
Ms. Norton votes no. Mr. Lynch?
No.
Mr. Lynch votes no. Mr. Connolly?
Nay.
Mr. Connolly votes nay. Mr. Krishnamurthy? Mr. Krishnamurthy votes no. Mr. Khanna? Mr. Mfume?
No.
Mr. Mfume votes no. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez?
No.
Ms. Ocasio-Cortez votes no. Ms. Porter?
No.
Ms. Porter votes no. Ms. Bush? Ms. Bush votes no. Ms. Brown?
No.
Ms. Brown votes no. Ms. Stansbury? Ms. Stansbury votes no. Mr. Garcia? Mr. Garcia votes no. Mr. Frost? Mr. Frost votes no. Ms. Lee? Ms. Lee votes no. Mr. Kassar? Mr. Kassar votes no. Ms. Crockett? Ms. Crockett votes no. Mr. Goldman? Mr. Goldman votes no. Mr. Moskowitz? Mr. Moskowitz votes no. Ms. Tlaib? Ms. Tlaib votes no. Ms. Presley? Ms. Presley votes no. Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman votes yes.
Have all members been recorded? Will the clerk please report the tally?
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the ayes are 24, the nays are 20.
The motion passes. Pursuant to this vote, the committee hereby adopts the report recommending that the House of Representatives find Attorney General Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress for refusal to comply with a subpoena duly issued by this committee. We will move the report to the full House. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Mr. Chairman.
Pursuant to House Rule 11, Clause 2, committee members shall have the right to file with the clerk of the committee supplemental, additional, minority, and dissenting views within 2 days. Without objection, so ordered. Additionally, the staff is authorized to make necessary technical and conforming changes to the report reported today, subject to the approval of the minority. Without objection, so ordered. If there is no further business before the committee, without objection, the committee stands adjourned. A quorum is present. Without objection, the chair is authorized. You're good. The chair is authorized to declare a recess at any time. Pursuant to Committee Rule 5B and House Rule 11, Clause 2, the chair may postpone further proceedings today on the question of approving any measure or matter or adopting an amendment on which a recorded vote or the yeas and nays are ordered. Now, pursuant to notice, I call up a report containing a resolution recommending that the House of Representatives find Attorney General Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress for refusal to comply with a subpoena duly issued by this committee. The clerk will report, which has been distributed in advance.
A report containing a House resolution recommending that the House of Representatives find Attorney General Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress for refusal to comply with a subpoena duly issued by this committee.
I ask unanimous consent that the report be considered as read and open for amendment at any point. Without objection, so ordered. The chair recognizes himself to offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute. The clerk will please report the amendment.
An amendment in the nature of a substitute offered to the contempt report as offered by Mr. Comer of Kentucky.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read and the substitute will be considered as original text for the purposes of further amendment. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes for a statement on the report.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Chair recognizes Mr. Donalds.
Mr. Chairman, for the purposes of this hearing, I move that debate be structured to 1 hour on the ANS, 30 minutes each side, and 10 minutes on every debate that might be entered during this hearing of the Oversight Committee.
Mr. Chairman.
Objection.
I object to that.
All right, there's an objection, so we'll vote.
Mr. Chairman, maybe we heard on the motion?
Yeah, there's a motion. And, all right, we'll suspend.
Mr. Chairman, my objection consists of this. He cannot move to override the rules of the House of Representatives. And we know exactly how debate is to occur, which is the way we usually proceed in debate. So I don't think we have the power to do that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, this committee has already done that earlier in this very Congress, we went into structured debate on a couple of items a few months ago.
Yes, by unanimous consent only. So I've objected to it. I mean, if the gentleman wants to take it to a vote, we can take it to a vote.
Gentlemen, you?
By all means. Well, why do we want to limit debate on this anyway?
Yeah. If I may, I rise in support.
Okay, we're going to suspend and call the parliamentarian to get the official ruling, correct?
Okay.
So it may take I'm estimating 5 minutes.
Fine, Mr. Chairman. In the meantime, I have a parliamentary inquiry of my own. Can you?
Well, I think we're suspended.
Oh, I just thought in order to save time, if you had other parliamentary inquiries, you could take them. No?
Yeah.
No?
No, let's get the ruling from the parliamentarian, then we'll proceed. All right. All right, the committee will come back to order. The motion is out of order. I'll now recognize myself for 5-minute opening statement.
But, Mr. Chairman, can I just pursue my parliamentary inquiry? Will you just explain why this markup was delayed to 8 p.m., throwing everybody's schedule into chaos today and the building's closed to the public? Why was that done?
Okay, that's not an appropriate inquiry.
The time of the meeting is not an appropriate procedural inquiry?
Your inquiry is not an appropriate parliamentary inquiry. So let's get back to order. Recognize myself for opening statement. Today's markup initiates contempt of Congress proceedings against U.S. Attorney Merrick Garland for defying a subpoena from the Oversight Committee. The committee's February subpoena required the Department of Justice to produce audio recordings of President Biden's interview with the special counsel investigating his mishandling and improper disclosure of classified materials. The department has chosen not to produce them. That's why we're here today. This is not a complicated subject. The Oversight Committee requires these audio recordings, and the Department of Justice has refused to provide them. We're not in court. The accommodations process has been exhausted. We are not making a request. The subpoena requires production. We are not requiring anything that interferes with an ongoing investigation. The special counsel already concluded his investigation by choosing not to charge President Biden because he is an, quote, elderly man with a poor memory, end quote. This morning, the Department of Justice informed the committee that the President has asserted executive privilege over the audio recordings of the President's interview with Special Counsel Hur. President Biden's decision to withhold the audio recording from Congress is alarming. The committee has already obtained the transcript of the interview. President Biden must have something to hide because it does not make sense that he would suppress the audio if the transcript was accurate. There is no substitute, as the many lawyers on this committee will tell you, for a recording of an actual conversation, not a summary, not a report, not a transcript. The White House has shown it is willing to alter transcripts to protect Joe Biden's image. We will not simply take the Justice Department's word about this interview. It is not the Department of Justice's decision how to cooperate with a subpoena, just like the people who receive subpoenas from DOJ do not get to negotiate their compliance. The Department of Justice is not above Congress. It is not above the law. It is also not President Biden's decision to assert executive privilege on audio recordings when the transcript has already been released. In 1974, the House rejected an attempt by President Nixon to release a transcript instead of subpoenaed audio recordings. And there should be bipartisan support to reject it here too. Not long ago, a very distinguished member of this committee said, and I quote, "The lesson is, please tell your children out there in America, if you get a subpoena to go before Congress, if you get a subpoena to go to the court, go. You have a legal responsibility to go," end quote. That distinguished member was none other than Ranking Member Jamie Raskin in 2022, only 2 years ago. Now Ranking Member Raskin has spent this Congress making excuses for why people like Hunter Biden or now the Department of Justice don't have to comply with congressional subpoenas. On January 10, 2023, this committee announced an investigation into President Biden's mishandling of classified documents. 2 days later, on January 12, 2023, the Attorney General announced his intent to appoint a special counsel to oversee the criminal investigation of President Biden. While the special counsel pursued this his investigation, the committee did its own work and found facts that have challenged the White House's official narrative about these classified materials. Months of thorough investigating by this committee have revealed attempts by the White House to keep the truth from the American people, not just about the documents themselves and why Joe Biden had them, but President Biden's memory and mental capacity to do his job. The committee's timeline begins well before the White House's narrative that President Biden's private lawyers just stumbled upon classified materials in November 2022 at the Penn Biden Center. May 24th, 2022, 6 months before the White House's story began, the White House counsel, Dana Remus, contacted a Biden former employee to retrieve President Biden's materials from the Penn Biden Center and then traveled there herself to pick up boxes. Why would the most senior lawyer at the White House be going to pack up an office that was supposed to have just have pictures and personal documents in it? Why were President Biden's personal lawyers visiting the Penn Biden Center days before the discovery of classified materials if they thought they were just picking up pictures and letters? Why were they calling FedEx to pick up boxes and a White House employee was leaving with boxes before the November 2nd discovery? Now the White House won't permit this committee to depose Dana Remus. The White House won't allow any of the employees that entered the Penn Biden Center before November 2022 to speak with the committee. What is the White House afraid of? Why not be transparent and open with this committee and the American people? For that matter, what are Democrats on this committee who oppose the release of these audio recordings afraid of? The recordings will just be President Biden speaking. What is it that would make them nervous about that? It's because they know, once again, President Biden has not been honest. He hasn't been honest about his family's foreign entanglements. He hasn't been honest about mishandling classified documents. And if the Democrats were honest, they'd admit President Biden's mental capacity is declining. Americans see it happening every day. In fact, 6 in 10 Americans don't have confidence in Joe Biden's mental capacity. If the Attorney General wants to defy Congress and not produce the audio recordings, he will face consequences for those actions. The path before us is clear. I urge this committee to move forward with holding Attorney General Merrick Garland in contempt. I now recognize the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, in this special nighttime episode, we resume the madcap comedy mystery series called Comer's High Crimes and Misadventures, the hilarious quest to impeach a president who has done nothing wrong, an avowedly low-budget but multi-million-dollar taxpayer-funded production which most Americans assumed had ended 2 months ago and had completely forgotten about. But tonight, with the cast and crew now fresh back from a surprise
You mean
trip
like
to
the
New York
January
City,
6th committee?
Stop it.
I'd like my time restored to me, Mr. Chairman.
Order, order. Chair recognizes the ranking member.
Okay.
Order, order, order.
Well, tonight with the cast and crew fresh back from their surprise trip to New York City, it's clear the show must go on. Now, our originally scheduled performance was supposed to be at 11 a.m. today, but it was postponed when members of the majority chose to join a mass spiritual pilgrimage to the New York criminal trial of a Florida man, an adjudicated fraudster and rapist, as he faces 34 felony counts of falsifying corporate financial records to cover up $130,000 paid in hush money to a porn star sex partner. Now, although some people are churlishly complaining that members should actually be here to vote on public business and should not have forced a last-minute change in the committee schedule, our colleagues properly demonstrated for all of history their fierce devotion to this clearly reformed, devout, and pious Florida spiritual leader who many supporters are now calling the Messiah from Mar-a-Lago. Of course, in the meantime, Chairman Jordan in the House Judiciary
Will
Committee...
the gentleman yield?
Preempted. No, I'm in the middle
Sir,
of my
I
introduction.
appreciate that photo. It's a good photo.
Yeah.
I would like a copy of that. I'm with it.
Would you like a signed one, Raskin?
Yes,
Could you get your members in order, Mr. Chairman?
It's a great photo. I want a copy of it.
Order.
Mr. Chairman.
In the meantime, Chairman Jordan in the House Judiciary Committee preempted our GOP colleagues on oversight, rendering this entire exercise not only absurd, but completely meaningless and redundant. They have already held Attorney General Garland purportedly in contempt. Now, when we last met on this matter, you will recall that the majority still had not identified a single high crime or misdemeanor that the president had committed. The committee's impressive 3.8 million pages of documents and 80 hours of testimony from 20 witnesses produced nothing but overwhelming and definitive proof that President Biden had done nothing wrong. So desperate for a new storyline, Republicans have come up with this astonishing new plot twist. They now propose to hold the Attorney General of the United States in contempt for giving the committee the information it asked for. And it is information that has absolutely nothing to do with their failed impeachment investigation or any high crimes or misdemeanors. Now, true fans of the show will recall from prior episodes this plot device of punishing people for complying with committee orders. But this new episode of not taking yes for an answer sends us off into strange new worlds of absurdity where no congressional committee has truly ever gone before. The majority wanted to know what President Biden said in his voluntary interview with Special Counsel Hur. And maybe there was an impeachable diamond lurking in the rough. So the Justice Department complied with the request. It turned over the 250-page transcript of President Biden's 5-hour interview with the special counsel. We had a hearing on it in this committee. The special counsel came, and there was nothing impeachable there. If there had been, you would have taken up Mr. Moskowitz's offer, and you would have voted on impeachment after it happened. But you did it. Committee members and millions of Americans got to read the entire transcript and can read it right now if they like. We all can learn what the president was asked and see how he answered each and every question. But the chairman insists that's not enough. He and the rest of America are clearly able to read the interview, but he wants to be able to hear the interview. The book is not sufficient. He wants the audio book. And because of this gratuitous and comical request, the whole troop now seeks to hold the Attorney General of the United States of America in contempt. Anyone watching can grasp the fallacy cleverly tucked into this new special primetime episode. There is nothing relevant or material that our committee can learn from an audio tape, which we cannot learn from the 250 pages of the transcript. The format of the medium does not change the content of the communications. So, in this absurd twist, our friends now seek to blame the spectacular belly flop of their own impeachment probe on Attorney General Garland and his sneaky effort to obstruct the investigation by cooperating with it. We know what real obstruction looks like because the last president specialized in it. This president agreed to sit down for a voluntary 5-hour interview with the special counsel investigating him. Attorney General Garland turned over the complete 250-page transcript interview. That's not obstruction. Real obstruction was Trump and his administration refusing to provide information Congress requested in more than 100 different congressional investigations and inquiries. And I know that pleases the gentlelady from Georgia because he issued...
I just want to hear Joe Biden. Why can't the American people hear him?
Order, Mr. Chairman. Get her under control.
President Trump issued an edict. No, I am glad that the gentlelady from Georgia is learning something tonight, okay? The president, I encourage her to be a good listener, and she's been a good listener. So, Mr. Chairman, the last president issued an edict directing all federal officials in his administration to categorically ignore and reject all congressional subpoenas. Do my colleagues remember that? Do they know that? He told them not to cooperate with any federal investigation at all by Congress. And we didn't hear a peep from any of them. That was real obstruction. Real obstruction happened when 2 members of this committee, who may be preparing to vote tonight to hold Attorney General Garland in contempt, brazenly refused to comply with subpoenas from the U.S. House Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol, and still have not responded to those subpoenas. But now it seems, Mr. Chairman, I just got past something that the whole obstruction gimmick may just be a fundraising ploy, which demeans the overwhelming legal integrity and impressive theatrical ambitions of this enterprise. I was just handed a mass fundraising email solicitation for your campaign that you sent out this evening, Mr. Chairman, stating that, quote, Biden and his advisors are terrified that I will release the recordings, forcing the media and Democrats to answer for the dismal decline of Biden's mental state. This could be the final blow to Biden with swing voters across the country. The Democrats are pulling out all the stops to stop the bleeding. Signed, James Comer, Chairman, House Oversight Committee. Now, I must confess my disappointment to be handed this fundraising solicitation, signed by you as Chairman of the House Oversight Committee. I thought that you were serious about the legal enterprise here and not just another political huckster calling hearings to score cheap political points and to make a buck. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the full and complete 250-page transcript of the President's interview with Special Counsel Hur, which we have now had in our committee for more than 2 months.
Without objection, so ordered.
And I know that some people may think this is a big Broadway production now with everybody's trip to the Big Apple, but it is high time to close this unhinged series and get back to some semblance of the people's work. We have the interview transcript. We have the President's words. There's no basis for this outlandish contempt proceeding, which only further disgraces our committee along with judiciary. Accordingly, Mr. Chairman, and since your members seem to be in such a hurry to be done with this, I move to immediately adjourn these proceedings.
Seconded.
I second.
So in your opening statement, you moved to adjourn.
I'm moving to adjourn these proceedings.
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no.
No.
The noes have it. Motion fails. Now, do any other members wish to be heard?
Recorded vote.
A recorded vote has been requested. The clerk will call the roll.
We got our thing. Why we not doing that?
No, not for a procedural vote. Not for
A procedural vote, we have to vote the old-fashioned way.
Mr. Jordan. Mr. Turner. Mr. Gosar. Mr. Gosar votes no. Ms. Fox. Ms. Fox votes no. Mr. Grothman. Mr. Grothman votes no. Mr. Cloud. Mr. Cloud votes no. Mr. Palmer. Mr. Palmer votes no. Mr. Higgins. Mr. Higgins votes no. Mr. Sessions. Mr. Sessions votes no. Mr. Biggs. Mr. Biggs votes no. Ms. Mace. Ms. Mace votes no. Mr. LaTurner. Mr. LaTurner votes no. Mr. Fallon. Mr. Fallon votes no. Mr. Donalds. Mr. Donalds votes no. Mr. Perry. Mr. Perry votes no. Mr. Timmons. Mr. Timmons votes no. Mr. Burchett.
No.
Mr. Burchett votes no. Ms. Green.
No.
Ms. Green votes no. Ms. McLean. Ms. Boebert.
No.
Ms. Boebert votes no. Mr. Fry. Mr. Fry votes no. Ms. Luna. Ms. Luna votes no. Mr. Langworthy. Mr. Langworthy votes no. Mr. Burleson. Mr. Burleson votes no. Mr. Waltz. Mr. Waltz votes no. Mr. Raskin.
Aye.
Mr. Raskin votes aye. Ms. Norton.
Yes.
Ms. Norton votes yes. Mr. Lynch. Mr. Lynch votes aye. Mr. Connolly.
Aye.
Mr. Connolly votes aye. Mr. Krishnamurthy. Mr. Krishnamurthy votes aye. Mr. Khanna. Mr. Mfume.
Aye.
Mr. Mfume votes aye. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
Aye.
Ms. Ocasio-Cortez votes aye. Ms. Porter.
Aye.
Ms. Porter votes aye. Ms. Bush. Ms. Brown. Ms. Brown votes yes. Ms. Stansbury. Ms. Stansbury votes yes. Mr. Garcia. Mr. Garcia votes aye. Mr. Frost. Mr. Frost votes yes. Ms. Lee. Ms. Lee votes yes. Mr. Kassar. Mr. Kassar votes yes. Ms. Crockett.
Aye.
Ms. Crockett votes aye. Mr. Goldman. Mr. Goldman votes aye. Mr. Moskowitz. Mr. Moskowitz votes aye. Ms. Tlaib. Ms. Tlaib votes yes. Ms. Presley. Ms. Presley votes aye. Mr. Chairman.
I vote yes, and how did Mr. Jordan vote? I mean, I vote no. I'm sorry, I vote no.
The chairman votes no.
Yeah. How did Mr. Jordan record it?
Mr. Jordan is not recorded. No. Mr. Jordan votes no.
That's 24. That's good.
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the nays are 24, the ayes are 19.
The noes have it. The motion to adjourn fails. Is any
Mr. Chairman, move to
other
strike the
members
last
seek
word.
recognition?
Mr. Chairman, move to strike the last word.
Chair recognizes Mr. Moskowitz.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, so welcome to Oversight After Dark. If you love James Comer at 11 o'clock in the morning, you're really going to love him at 8:30 p.m. So, members, the hearing was moved today. We don't have to ask the question. The hearing was moved today so that members could go to New York and attend the Trump hearing. But how's he doing? He's complained that he's chilly in the courtroom. Is it chilly? Is it chilly?
Will the gentleman yield?
No, I'll assume it's
He's
chilly.
doing very good.
Okay, good. So, it was mentioned by the ranking member about really what we're doing here. You don't have to listen to my words. I would like to do a spirited reading of the campaign email sent out by the chairman. And it's on lovely stationery. In fact, it says, from the desk of the oversight chairman. I'm not sure you can do that, but I'm not an ethics expert. It says, friend. President Biden is exerting executive privilege in a last-ditch attempt to stop the disastrous audio recording of his interview with special counsel from being released. And it's highlighted in yellow. Want to make sure people saw that. Just a few months ago, the White House bragged that Joe Biden had nothing to hide and would not exert executive privilege during special counsel Hur's investigation. They even said he had nothing to hide. That's in italics. Now Biden and his advisors are terrified that I, James Comer, will release the recordings, forcing the media and the Democrats to answer for the dismal decline of Biden's mental state. He even had Attorney Merrick Garland write a letter saying that his interview falls within the scope of executive privilege. This could be the final blow with swing voters across the country. Okay. You and I know, hold on, we're not done, it gets better. You and I know he's not up for the job, but the mainstream's media refusal to report on it as only keeping him in the game. Stand with Comer. The Democrats, you sure about that? The Democrats are pulling out all the stops to stop the bleeding. That means coming after me with everything they had. If you're able, we hope you are, I'd be so grateful if you'd consider making a donation to my campaign. I sure need it to defend against the onslaught of attacks. Thank you for everything. James Comer, chairman of the House Oversight Committee. Without objection, I'd like to enter that into the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
All right, beautiful. So again, Mr. Chairman, since you think this is the final blow, right, and obviously the chairman of Judiciary is here too, we only have June, July, and September before the election. We're not here in August and October. So, I mean, I'm sure the American people are paying attention at 11:30 p.m. where you buried this hearing because it's so important. When are we going to do the impeachment of Joe Biden? When is that going to happen? Is it going to be June? Is it going to be July? Is it going to be September? Let's just put it on the calendar. Let's just put it on the calendar. Pick a month. We're available. We were available at 11 a.m. You guys weren't. Just pick a month, right, so we can get it on the calendar and do the impeachment. So hold on. I'll give you choices. Ready? June. July. How about September? Okay. So we're never going to schedule this thing. It's never going to happen. He's sending out more subpoenas because he has no evidence. Okay. And yet here we go around and around and around. And so we get it. You'll raise money off of it. Congratulations to you. You know, if you want, Mr. Chairman, I can get the transcript out. I can do a spirited reading. We can sit here. I'll do all 250 pages for you. I'll even put on like a Biden mask, make it visual so you can like really get in the moment. I mean, we just want to know, like, what's it going to take, Mr. Chairman, to get you comfortable? You go on Newsmax and you get comfortable. What's it going to take to get you comfortable to ask your friend, Chairman Jordan, sitting next to you, when we're going to schedule impeachment? So we'll do it again. Ready? How about June, July, September?
Does the gentleman know how many spare Biden masks there are available in D.C.?
I don't, but there's a lot on Etsy. I mean, you can get lots of things. Okay, so you know, look, I'll yield the balance of my time to the ranking member if he wants to use the last 40. Oh, you have something to say, Mr. Chairman? Go ahead, please.
No, I was going to say you yielded to ranking member
Yeah,
Raskin. He has 30 seconds.
Go ahead, Mr. Ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Moskowitz. There is an ethics principle that no solicitation of a campaign or political contribution may be linked to an action taken or to be taken by a member or employee in his or her official capacity. That's just a reminder to my side. I hope that nobody is linking specific actions that you're taking on the Oversight Committee to campaign contributions or solicitations. And with that, I'll yield back to the distinguished gentleman from Florida.
Time's expired. Does any other member seek recognition?
Mr.
Chair recognizes Ms. Greene.
I'd like to know if any of the Democrats on this committee are employing Judge Merchan's daughter.
Please tell me what that has to do with Merrick Garland.
Is she a porn star?
Oh, Goldman. That's right. He's advising. Okay.
He's advising who? What? Do you know what we're here for? You know we're here about AG.
I don't think you know what you're here for.
Well, you the one talking about. I guess
I think your fake eyelashes are messing up.
No,
what you're
ain't
reading.
nothing.
Hold on.
Listen.
Order.
Mr. Chairman,
That's beneath
would
even
you
you,
please
Mr. Green.
regain
That's beneath
order
even
of your
you.
committee?
Order.
Please.
There's a point of order.
We have a point of order. Mr. Lynch, state your point.
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to ask the parliamentarian if your conduct here in raising money in connection with this hearing is referable to the Ethics Committee within this hearing. Is a motion in order to refer your conduct and your abuse of
It's not a point of order.
Mr. I do have a point of order, and I would like to move to take down Ms. Greene's words. That is absolutely unacceptable. How dare you attack the physical appearance of another person?
Are your feelings hurt?
Her words down.
Aw.
Oh, girl, baby girl.
Oh, really?
Don't even play. with
Baby
me.
girl? I don't think
we are going to
so.
move, and we're going to take your words down.
I second that motion.
So who will have to pay? Okay. All right. We're suspending.
Absolutely.
It's crazy.
That-
Grade.
No, we're taking her words down. No way is that being allowed. Retract. Absolutely not. Absolutely.
So, she agrees to it. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be in over.
Not today. Yeah. Not today.
I got to find some place where I can work.
Here's what we're not going to do. You can't. It's against
Sit down. Sit down.
apologize. And if it's not a real apology, here's what we're not going to do. We're not going to do a smarmy apology. She has to actually apologize. And that needs to be up to Ms. Crockett as well.
Sure.
It needs to be sincere.
This is crazy.
Oh, let's do it. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Because her ego's bruised.
Yeah, that's what it is.
That's all it is.
She's not used to
She doesn't
people
wanna
talking
say-
back to
She
her.
doesn't want to say sorry to nobody for nothing. She's going to learn.
I'll ask. Yeah. No. No. Yeah. Yeah. I know. They're gonna.
Who's leaving?
The committee will reconvene. Ms. Greene has 4 minutes and 21 seconds. There's a motion. Ms. Greene, do you wish to strike your words?
I have 4 minutes and 21 seconds to speak.
I think we have to do the motion first, and then unless there's another motion, then you'll be recognized again. But I believe there's another motion coming. So, you agree to strike your words?
Yeah. I'll
Okay.
agree.
Ms. Greene agrees to strike her words.
I believe she
Chair
needs to apologize.
recognizes
No,
Mr.
no, she needs to
Perry.
apologize.
Okay, hold on. Then after Mr. Perry's going to be recognized, then Ms. Greene
I'm not
has 4 minutes and
apologizing.
21
Well,
seconds.
then
Okay,
you're
reserve
not
the right to
striking your
object.
words.
I am
Mr.
not
Perry.
apologizing.
Now let's go. Come on, guys.
Why don't you debate me?
Mr. Chairman, the
it's
minority.
pretty
No,
self-evident.
You're not.
Yeah, you're
out
not.
of order.
You don't have enough
You're out of order.
intelligence.
Chair recognizes Mr. Perry.
Okay, move to strike
I'd
the.
like to
I
strike
move to
those
strike the
words
lady's
as well.
words.
I would like to
Move to strike the lady's
as well.
words again.
That's 2 requests to strike. That's 2 requests to strike.
Oh, they cannot take the
There's
words.
another motion to strike her words again. Please
All right.
get
Okay.
your members under
Here's
control.
the correct parliamentary. Ms. Greene, do you agree to unanimous consent to strike your words?
I repeat again for the second time. Yes, I'll
All
strike
right.
my words, but I'm not
all right.
apologizing.
Without objection. Without
Not
objection.
apologizing.
Chair
Reserving the right to
recognize-
object.
No.
Chairman, I
Chair
reserve the right to
recognizes
object.
Mr.
I
Perry.
reserve the right to
Mr.
object.
Chairman, I move that Mr. Goldman's words and Ms. Ocasio-Cortez's words be stricken.
Okay.
Which words? And you have to do it contemporaneously. Object. The objection must be contemporaneous, and they haven't spoken in 10 minutes.
Nobody's spoken and said in 10 minutes.
Well, that's right. Therefore, defeating your proposal.
You all have. So that's my motion, Mr. Chairman.
We weren't able to.
Well, I object. It doesn't refer to anything that's on the floor. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez objected immediately and instantaneously, as you're supposed to do under the rules and precedents of the House of Representatives.
So the first time he could Mr.
Chairman,
point of parliamentary inquiry.
All right. We're going to suspend for a minute, but We'll talk to the parliamentary.
I object to your objection.
Okay, committee will come back to order. So, Ms. Greene asked unanimous consent to strike her words. Mr. Raskin objected. I'm going to recognize Mr. Raskin for his objection. We're not counting against Ms. Greene has 4 minutes and 21 seconds left. This will not count against her time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I reserve the right to object because the understanding of the minority is that the gentlelady from Georgia would move to take her words down and strike her words and to offer a sincere apology for having engaged in personalities against another member, offending her personal appearance and insulting her. We don't do that in this committee. And I think the major problem was that we allowed pornography in this committee, and we've gone down a bad road. But in any event, we should not allow face-to-face ad hominem insults. It's totally contrary to the rules of the House of Representatives. And I would ask Ms. Greene if she would just make the apology. It's not that complicated. We don't want to get into face-to-face insults.
You will never get an apology out of me.
I
don't owe you
Then I
one.
object.
Then I object, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Raskins objects. So the member will state the words he wishes taken down or she wishes taken down.
Well, what I heard her say, but I would like her to repeat the words. What I heard her to say was, and you can take off your fake eyelashes too. Well, then what did you say?
I mean,
what did you say, Ms. Greene?
Really?
What was?
I mean,
the clerk needs to report the words, but those.
Okay, the clerk.
That was the sum and substance.
The clerk will report the words. Clerk will report the words.
Mr. Chairman,
We could subpoena the audio tape, Mr. Chairman.
This is great. Release the audio.
It will just take us a few minutes to get
Okay.
those words.
We'll suspend.
Aren't we here for audio?
Chairman.
I'd like Joe Biden's audio.
Celsius.
Where? We're on Celsius train. Celsius? Can you grab me one? He's
So it is now
unfortunately
8:55.
at my apartment sleeping. I was trying to put him down, and then I got sucked into this.
You have a lot of.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. Hey. So there.
Are they or are they not fake eyelashes? I think they are too.
All right.
It's like rule of the house. You can't be.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, just a point of order here. I believe there are members who've been interviewed by the media from their seats. Do we allow that?
They identify as clerks.
That have.
Chairman, sorry.
What do you?
Like as clerks?
That what?
You're not respecting their identity?
Wait, someone is being.
Okay.
Is that allowed?
For decorum, the media will evacuate the well.
Mr. Chairman.
At the request of the.
Mr. Chairman,
complaint of the ranking member.
Netflix followed Hunter Biden into this room. I don't remember anyone across the aisle complaining about Hunter Biden, his TV film crew, when he came up here.
That's a good point. So do you withdraw that? Do you withdraw that?
Yeah, I was just.
Okay, Mr. Raskin withdrew this one. So, are we ready to proceed with Ms. Greene finishing her 4 minutes and 21 seconds?
What is the ruling on the motion to take her words down? I thought we had an agreement. Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I would just urge you to prevail upon the distinguished gentlelady from Georgia. Her words.
Well, it's very difficult for the stenographer to understand everything with everyone yelling and screaming back and forth. But we went through this with I would like to make a point. We went through this with some of the things that Mr. Swalwell said in the Hunter Biden deposition. Some of the things that he said negative about some of our staff and the members weren't picked up by the stenographer, unfortunately, because there was so much yelling.
Fair enough, Mr. Chairman, but I think we don't want to see a complete dissent of our committee. And the verbatim quote of the gentlelady was, "I think your fake eyelashes are messing up your reading." That is what she said. I think your fake eyelashes, and that's obviously engaging in personalities. It's an ad hominem attack, and I would just ask every member of this committee, in a fair-minded way, would you want to be talked to in that way about your personal appearance by another member of the committee? Because what we're doing is we're setting standards going forward. All the gentlelady seeks is a simple apology, Ms. Greene.
Look, here, I will say this. For committee decorum, we're not supposed to engage in personalities of members. That applies to everyone on both sides of the aisle. Mr. Boskowitz, Ms. Greene, every single member across the aisle. Can we?
What did he say?
He just threw Moskowitz into it for now.
Can we? Are we?
Can
we proceed?
The motion belongs to the gentlelady from New York, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
Okay, the clerk. Back to order. The clerk will report. The stenographer.
Mr. Chairman, there was a lot of over-talking, but as far as we can make out, and you can remove your false eyelashes too.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well, let's have a vote on that, because I honestly don't think there's a member in this committee who would think we should descend to that level of discourse here, other than one, perhaps. I'm sorry? You agree it should be taken down, Mr. Dons?
Mr. Raskin, the gentlelady from Georgia already said that she would strike down her words. What else are we doing past that point? I didn't realize apologies were a matter of...
It's an agreement. No, the suggestion was made to the minority that rather than go through the process of formally taking her words down, which means she wouldn't be able to speak for the rest of our hearing, as you know, that she could continue to speak, but she would voluntarily take her words down and offer a sincere apology.
I'm going to overrule the point of order. It wasn't personalities. It was undecorous. And I would encourage, again, every member to abide by committee decorum, and let's vote. We all know what we're here for. You're either going to vote for it or against it.
Mr. Chairman.
And the lady from Georgia has 4 minutes and 21 seconds
Mr.
remaining.
Chairman, point of order.
I appealed the ruling of the chair, Mr. Chairman, because the rules provide that you cannot insult another member's personal appearance or attire. And that is obviously part of engaging in personalities.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Hold on. We have so many motions. We're sitting here trying to... All right, there's now a motion to table Mr. Raskin's motion.
No, but I was appealing your motion.
The motion by Mr. Perry, seconded by
I don't believe
Mr.
you can
Gosar.
table motion. I don't believe you can table. It's not eligible to table. It's not eligible to table.
We can table the appeal. We can table the appeal.
I don't know if we can table. Is
The
it
underlying
privilege to
motion.
strike?
We can table the appeal. There's a motion and second to table the appeal.
Okay, just to be clear, your ruling was that she had not engaged in personalities?
Mr. Chairman, when do I have my 4 minutes and 21 seconds?
I've already ruled.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
No, there's a motion to vote on. It's not debatable. Motion by Mr. Perry, seconded by Mr. Gosar to table. All those in favor of tabling signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no.
No.
Motion passes to table. Now,
move for the ayes and the nays.
recognizes Ms. Greene.
I want to
move for the ayes and recorded vote.
A recorded vote to table has been requested. The clerk will call the roll on table.
Amendments at the desk.
Mr. Jordan.
Have an amendment at the desk.
We're voting on a requested roll call vote on whether or not to table. She started the roll call with Mr. Jordan.
Mr. Turner. Mr. Gosar. Mr. Gosar votes yes. Ms. Fox. Ms. Fox votes yes. Mr. Grothman. Mr. Grothman votes yes. Mr. Cloud. Mr. Cloud votes yes. Mr. Palmer. Mr. Palmer votes aye. Mr. Higgins. Mr. Higgins votes yes. Mr. Sessions. Mr. Sessions votes aye. Mr. Biggs. Mr. Biggs votes aye. Ms. Mace. Ms. Mace votes aye. Mr. LaTurner. Mr. LaTurner votes aye. Mr. Fallon. Mr. Fallon votes aye. Mr. Donalds. Mr. Donalds votes yes. Mr. Perry. Mr. Perry votes aye. Mr. Timmons. Mr. Timmons votes aye. Mr. Burchett. Aye. Mr. Burchett votes aye. Ms. Greene.
Aye.
Ms. Greene votes aye. Ms. McLean. Ms. Boebert.
Present.
Ms. Boebert votes present. Mr. Fry. Mr. Fry votes aye. Ms. Luna. Ms. Luna votes aye. Mr. Langworthy. Mr. Langworthy votes aye. Mr. Burleson. Mr. Burleson votes aye. Mr. Waltz. Mr. Raskin. Mr. Raskin votes no. Ms. Norton.
No.
Ms. Norton votes no. Mr. Lynch. Mr. Lynch votes no. Mr. Connolly.
Nay.
Mr. Connolly votes nay. Mr. Krishnamurthy. No. Mr. Krishnamurthy votes no. Mr. Khanna. Mr. Mfume.
No.
Mr. Mfume votes no. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez votes no. Ms. Porter.
No.
Ms. Porter votes no. Ms. Bush. Ms. Brown. Ms. Brown votes no. Ms. Stansbury. Ms. Stansbury votes no. Mr. Garcia. Mr. Garcia votes no. Mr. Frost. Mr. Frost votes no. Ms. Lee. Ms. Lee votes no. Mr. Kassar. Mr. Kassar votes no. Ms. Crockett.
No.
Ms. Crockett votes no. Mr. Goldman. Mr. Goldman votes no. Mr. Moskowitz. Mr. Moskowitz votes no. Ms. Tlaib. Ms. Tlaib votes no. Ms. Presley. Ms. Presley votes no. Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman votes yes. Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the ayes are 21, the nays are 19, with 1 voting present.
All right, motion table. Now the chair recognizes Ms. Greene for 4 minutes and 21 seconds.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Who's?
It's me.
Ms. Crockett.
I'm just curious, just to better understand your ruling, if someone on this committee then starts talking about somebody's bleach blonde, bad built butch body, that would not be engaging in personalities, correct?
A what now?
Chairman, I make a motion to strike those words.
I don't think that's
Hold
a
on.
part
I'm
of it.
trying to find clarification on what qualifies.
Chairman, motion to strike those
I had no idea
words.
what you just said.
We're not gonna do this. Look, you guys earlier literally just
You just voted to do it.
Y'all did it first, so you don't want to talk about it.
Voted to do it.
Order.
I'm trying to get clarification.
Look at, calm down. Calm down.
No, because this
I
is
would
what
like
y'all
to get
do.
through proceeding.
So I'm trying to get
Ms.
clarification.
Crockett, you're not
Y'all wanna
recognized.
play
Ms.
games.
Crockett.
I can't hear you with your
And
yelling.
You don't want
calm
me to
down.
Be,
Can
no,
you please calm down?
Don't tell me to calm down.
Calm down.
Because y'all
Please
talk
calm
noise,
down.
and then you
You're
can't
out of
take
control.
Because if I
Look,
come,
Chairman,
if I
can
come
we
and
send
talk
outside to
shit
take a
about
break
her,
for 5
y'all
minutes?
gonna have a problem.
Mr.
Order.
Chairman.
All right,
Sorry.
chair.
I don't know why
Okay.
you're
Order.
acting
Chair
like
now
that.
recognizes
Not cute.
Ms. Greene for 4 minutes and 21 seconds. 4 minutes. Let Ms. Greene talk, and then you all can. I'll recognize.
But I move to strike her words for a second time based on her second set of personal remarks attacking another member.
Who? Chairman Comer.
Because you all cannot
I have an
seem
amendment at
to
the desk,
apply
and this
the rules
sideshow
of the
needs to
committee.
stop.
We have to do this every time.
Hey, I'm recognized. I'm recognized. I'm going to go ahead and start talking.
Look, I know. Look, I don't know if you noticed it. I have 2 hearing aids. I'm very deaf. I'm not understanding. Everybody's yelling. I'm doing the best I can. Can we not recognize Ms. Greene and let her
We
get?
cannot because of the rules of the committee, Mr. Chair. That is what I'm trying to communicate in the present moment.
We have a Okay, what's the motion?
The motion is to strike the gentlelady's words for the second set of remarks, not the first, the second.
She
that
has
applied
no
to me.
idea. She has no idea. I think, Mr. Chairman, I'm the only one recognized right now.
We objected at the time.
Will the member state the words she wishes
Yes.
struck?
She told me, or she asserted that I was not intelligent. These are the specific words. Like, we can have it read by the clerk.
It was made immediately.
And it was made immediately. I am not moving now.
I don't think it was
I am not
timely.
moving
It was made
now.
immediately, both by the gentlelady and by me.
Mr.
Guys,
Chair,
look.
it was made immediately.
It was made
and
immediately,
you said
both by
that
the
you would
gentlelady and by
return
me.
to us.
Guys,
She said, you don't have the intelligence to talk to me, is what she said.
the chair recognizes Ms. Greene for 4 minutes and 21 seconds.
Mr. Chair, what is happening with the ruling?
I object to the ruling now.
We must object.
I mean, if you want to take it up.
Just move on.
Yeah.
Move on.
We should just adjourn.
Can somebody?
This is not a telling. You can't say
Yeah.
because of
I was-
or hearsay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought Jerry Springer died. Hey, I'm just glad that these chairs are too big to throw. This is not oversight, it's Jerry Springer.
Mr. Chairman, a point of order. Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, on a point of order.
There's a motion on the table.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll go through right away.
Yeah. To a time certain tomorrow. To a time certain tomorrow. That way, we'll take this up again.
Would a motion to adjourn take precedence over an existing motion on
Yes. Motion to recess, wouldn't it? To day to day?
Take precedence over
Alex, how do you feel about my moving to adjourn?
Okay.
Okay. Just to take the words
No, I'm gonna rule to strike the word.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I know. We got it. All right. Okay. All right. Back in order. The committee will come back to order. The chair rules to strike the words that Ms. Greene said, where she said that Ms. Ocasio-Cortez was not.
Said
What
she
you
lacked
said.
the intelligence to
Okay.
speak to her when, in
Okay.
fact,
I
Ms.
didn't want to say it
Ocasio-Cortez is
because I
a
didn't
brilliant
want you all
member.
to get anything on me.
No, we should be on the record with what was
Okay, we struck the words that she said, you're not intelligent. Are we good on that?
No.
The words
we
have
need-
been struck.
No, it was,
No.
it was to take the words down.
Yeah, we're
Mr.
good.
Chairman.
Goldman, you're out of order. Listen.
Mr. Chairman, her motion was to take her words down, not to strike the words.
It was to strike the words. That's what Ms. Ocasio-Cortez asked.
Well,
Okay, now.
which is to take them
That
down.
is to- there's no such
Which is to
thing.
take them down.
Which is to
Which
take
is to
them
take
down.
them
Which
down.
is to take them down.
it's-
They've been taken down.
All right, then that
They've been
means
taken
that Ms.
down. All right.
Greene has to leave the
Now,
committee.
Ms. Goldman,
She cannot
Mr.
speak
Goldman,
any-
you're out of order. Now, I want everyone let's comply with decorum. The chair recognizes
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Greene for, no,
Wait,
no,
her words
no,
were taken
no.
down.
No, her
Yeah,
words were
the chair-
taken down. That means she cannot speak.
The chair
If
recognizes.
her words are stricken, she cannot
Not
speak
speak.
in this hearing. Talk to your parliamentarian. She has to get out.
Without a motion under unanimous consent, the gentlelady is not permitted to speak for
Chairman.
the rest of this session. And we're happy to revive our motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman. I think these 17-hour days might not work for us.
Something about working, huh?
Yeah, maybe showing up for a vote.
You have a lot to say, being that you're on retainer for the judge's daughter. Sorry, trust fund kid.
Mr. Chairman.
We should strike those words too.
I hope you brought your popcorn.
Mr. Chair,
Strike
we have to
those
strike
after
those as
we
well.
strike the
Mr.
fact that they
Chairman.
called they were making comments about Marjorie's body. So we can do this all night long, but I have a motion.
Mr. Chairman, this is out of
I'd like to
control.
get.
We should adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Motion at the desk.
Mr. Chairman,
I think my body's pretty good. I'm going to be 50
point of order.
this month. I am. I turned 50.
Mr. Chairman.
Pretty good.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We have some members in the room who are drinking inside the hearing room who are not members of this hearing.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, we have members who are not on this committee sitting in the hearing
We have
room
members
drinking.
talking who haven't been recognized. Mr. Chairman, point of inquiry. Mr. Chairman, point
Democrats are against
Mr.
drinking.
Chairman, point of inquiry.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Water.
We're going to
There you go.
suspend. We're going to suspend for 5 minutes while our staffs work the parliamentary questions out. So this committee has
Mr.
suspended
Chairman.
for 5 minutes. It'd be a good time for everyone to go out and take
Can
a
we
break.
apologize to the
Get some
American
fresh
people
air.
back home
5
first?
minutes.
That would be really
Committee
great.
will
if they
reconvene in
just
5
heard how
minutes.
sorry we are that we're not.
The committee will reconvene. Members are advised they must observe the House's standard of decorum in debate and conduct. They must speak and act respectfully and may not use disorderly words or unparliamentary language, such as words that negative towards your colleagues or engage in personalities towards the president or senator. Does that count for a former president? Okay, all right. So the chair, I move that the gentlelady from Georgia be permitted to proceed in order.
And I would object and ask for a recorded vote.
Mr. Raskins requested a recorded vote for my motion to allow the gentlelady from Georgia to proceed. I vote yes. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Jordan. Mr. Turner. Mr. Gosar. Mr. Gosar votes yes. Ms. Fox. Mr. Grothman. Mr. Cloud. Mr. Cloud votes yes. Mr. Palmer. Mr. Palmer votes aye. Mr. Higgins. Mr. Higgins votes yes. Mr. Sessions. Mr. Sessions votes aye. Mr. Biggs. Mr. Biggs votes aye. Ms. Mace. Ms. Mace votes aye. Mr. LaTurner. Mr. Fallon. Mr. Fallon votes aye. Mr. Donalds. Mr. Donalds votes yes. Mr. Perry. Mr. Perry votes aye. Mr. Timmons. Mr. Timmons votes aye. Mr. Burchett.
Aye.
Mr. Burchett votes aye. Ms. Green.
Aye.
Ms. Green votes aye. Ms. McLean. Ms. Boebert.
No.
Ms. Boebert votes no. Mr. Fry. Mr. Fry votes aye. Ms. Luna. Ms. Luna votes aye. Mr. Langworthy. Mr. Langworthy votes aye. Mr. Burleson. Mr. Burleson votes aye. Mr. Waltz. Mr. Waltz votes aye. Mr. Raskin.
No.
Mr. Raskin votes no. Ms. Norton.
No.
Ms. Norton votes no. Mr. Lynch. Mr. Lynch votes no. Mr. Connolly.
Nay.
Mr. Connolly votes nay. Mr. Krishnamurthy. No. Mr. Krishnamurthy votes no. Mr. Khanna. Mr. Mfume.
No.
Mr. Mfume votes no. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
No.
Ms. Ocasio-Cortez votes no. Ms. Porter.
No.
Ms. Porter votes no. Ms. Bush. Ms. Brown. Ms. Brown votes no. Ms. Stansbury. Ms. Stansbury votes no. Mr. Garcia. Mr. Garcia votes no. Mr. Frost. Mr. Frost votes no. Ms. Lee. Ms. Lee votes no. Mr. Kassar. Mr. Kassar votes no. Ms. Crockett.
No.
Ms. Crockett votes no. Mr. Goldman. Mr. Goldman votes nay. Mr. Moskowitz. Mr. Moskowitz votes nay. Ms. Tlaib. Ms. Tlaib votes no. Ms. Presley. Ms. Presley votes nay. Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman votes yes. Mr. Grothman is not recorded. Mr. Grothman votes yes. Mr. LaTurner is not recorded.
Yes.
Mr. LaTurner votes yes. Ms. Fox is not recorded. Ms. Fox votes yes. Mr. Sessions is recorded as voting aye.
Do any other members wish to vote? Has Nancy voted? Has Ms. Mace voted? Yes, okay. Well, the clerk can tally the report.
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the ayes are 22, the nays are 20.
The motion passes. Now recognize Ms. Greene for 4 minutes and 21 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're here tonight to hold Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress, and there has been complaint and complaint after complaint from the other side of the aisle. Now, I'd like to remind everyone that the American taxpayers were forced to pay millions and millions of dollars for the January 6th committee last Congress, who was convened during prime time, evening hours, and they hired an ABC News executive, James Goldston, to produce these committee hearings. Actually had the American taxpayers pay for this. And Democrats are complaining about our committee hearing this evening. I'd also like to remind everyone that during the 117th Congress, we would vote until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, many, many times, late at night. And that was when Democrats controlled the House. But the worst thing about the January 6th committee is that the Speaker broke her own rules. when she produced this committee, created the committee, the minority leader appointed members of Congress to this committee, and they were denied being able to participate on the January 6th committee. This committee operated against the rules of Congress. It was procedurally defective. And today, right now, Peter Navarro is sitting in jail because he was held in contempt of Congress. And also, Steve Bannon has been held in contempt of Congress and could go to jail soon. Those are the consequences of when the Democrats controlled the House. They broke the rules. And the consequences are people have gone to jail, and they may soon go to jail. And tonight, we're here to hold Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress. And this committee needs to be able to proceed forward to do that. I'd also like to remind the committee and anyone watching this that every single time we hold a committee hearing in Oversight Committee, the Democrats attack President Trump repeatedly. Doesn't matter what the issue is, doesn't matter what the topic is, they can't produce facts, they can't produce anything to make their arguments. They make it about personal character attacks on the former president of the United States and our Republican presidential candidate. Every single time they attack President Trump. They think the way to win an argument is to attack President Trump. You talk about character attacks, it goes on and on. Also, members of this committee attack me repeatedly, over and over and over again, constantly. But they're offended when I say something back. And I think this needs to be called out, Mr. Chairman, because the hypocrisy is screaming and the American people watch it every single day. And I will not apologize for my words, and I will not change them. And I will not tolerate being treated this way constantly on this committee and in other committees. And I think that we need, if we're going to hold hearings like this and hold Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress, I think we should move forward and go ahead and do that. But the actual behavior that happens across the aisle in this committee of constant attacks on President Trump are unbelievable. And attacks on President Trump, the weaponized government against President Trump. I want you to know something. He may be sitting in a New York courtroom with a sham trial with a political judge whose daughter works for Democrats. But I'll tell you right now, President Trump is up 10 points in Georgia because the American people see this for exactly what it is. They know what it is. And it's completely wrong. And the fact that our American people's hard-earned tax dollars were spent on the January 6th committee with no accountability is wrong too. I think Democrats should be held accountable for that and the wrongs that they've committed, and the fact that Peter Navarro is in jail right now and Steve Bannon may have to go to jail soon. And Mr. Chairman, I would ask that we can go ahead and move forward as soon as possible to hold Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress. Thank you.
Gentlelady yields. Does any other member seek recognition? Mr. Garcia.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight has been very interesting. I want to just take a moment just to put today in context. We're here right now at this late hour to accommodate the majority's field trip to praise their leader. And let's not forget that he left office in disgrace. Yes, gentle lady from Georgia, we're going to talk about that Donald Trump, who stole classified materials and stored them in his bathroom. He was investigated and indicted for his crimes. Now, Attorney General Garland set up a parallel investigation of President Biden's handling of classified documents as well. And that shows the Department of Justice is actually fair and independent. So to oversee this investigation, he appointed Robert Hur, a former U.S. attorney handpicked by Donald Trump. Robert Hur found no wrongdoing by President Biden. No wrongdoing by President Biden. But he chose to smear President Biden with a totally unprofessional and wrong assessment of the president's age and mental sharpness. Now, as we know, his assessment about President Biden was wrong because you can literally yourself read the transcript, which is over 250 pages long. Now, many of us, especially us Democrats, know the president. He is sharp. He is focused on the big issues. He's dealing with large challenges across the world. Now, the majority is hyping up this issue to distract us from the fact that Donald Trump keeps embarrassing himself in public. And as much as the gentle lady from Georgia and others may not like it, we know that Trump's public statements have been crazy and incoherent for years. And we know that he is too tired and sleepy to stay awake through his own criminal trial. It's not President Biden who's not sharp. It's, in fact, Donald Trump. Now, let's look at public reporting. I'm only going to talk about public reporting. His criminal trial started on April 15th, and here's a summary of the press reports. On his first day of his trial, Reuters reported that Trump appeared to doze off during jury selection. On April 16th, it was reported that Trump dropped his head inside the courtroom, keeping his eyes closed before jolting his head upright. On April 19th, the New York Times reported Trump's eyes remained, quote, closed for extended periods during the final day of jury selection. On April 22nd, MSNBC reported that Trump's lawyers were fighting to keep him awake. On April 30th, NBC and the New York Times reported that Trump nodded off for significant portions of witness testimony, and as we all know, basically kept his eyes closed for hours and hours on end. On May 9th, Trump's eyes remained closed for many minutes, and Trump later, of course, dozed on and off. And the reports go on and on. May 13th, Trump was, quote, asleep during the afternoon session. On May 14th, a political reporter said Trump slouched in his seat and closed his eyes and his mouth. Now, here we have a photo of Donald Trump, of course, through some of his trial. And I bring this up because it's Donald Trump that's asleep and that's hurting and dividing our country. And this attack on President Biden and his mental acuteness or his ability or his age is completely just a reason and an excuse for the Republicans to continue to attack President Biden when we all know that Donald Trump is the one that's unfit to be president. And that's why the majority is so desperate to be here today, because they want to help him get elected and hurt President Biden. Well, it's not going to work, and with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize myself first to offer an amendment. The clerk will distribute the amendment to all members. No, we're not done. We're not done. I'm just going to do an amendment, and then we'll have all the debate we want. And I know Mr. Goldman has an amendment he wants to offer. Ms. Luna has an amendment. And
the first part before the amendment.
We can go back to time on the ANS.
yeah, we can go back. Everybody will have an opportunity to talk. We're just going to go ahead and do the amendment in nature of substitute. The clerk, does everyone have a copy? Okay, Ms. Boebert, I have to allow people to speak on the ANS if they want right now, so I will recognize you for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I just want to apologize to the American people. I don't think that this is the best use of our time when we are squabbling. It's one thing to have fun and laugh as members of Congress and try to find humor or some sort of lightheartedness in what we are doing. But when things get as heated as they have, it's unfortunately an embarrassment on our body as a whole. And so I just want to personally apologize to the American people for that. But we are here to hold Attorney General Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress for ignoring subpoenas and believing that he is above the law. We simply want to hear what was said in the interview that was transcribed. Yes, we have the transcriptions, but the White House has recently edited President Biden's mistakes by labeling them, quote, inaudible in transcripts. The committee members must be able to assess for themselves that the transcripts accurately reflects the true content of the interviews. Now, the American people, fortunate or unfortunate, have heard Joe Biden speak for over 3 years now, really, if you include the campaign, about 4 years. And we have witnessed in real time a massive cognitive decline. President Trump, when he was in office, he underwent testing for his cognitive dissonance, for his ability to function as President of the United States, as the Commander-in-Chief. And unfortunately, I haven't seen Joe Biden even read a teleprompter properly and get through the reading without also adding in what's in the brackets when he needs to take a pause. And there are many things that we could go on here, but I want to hear the inflections in Joe Biden's responses. when he is answering these questions. Now, on February 27th, 2024, the Oversight Committee issued a subpoena for relevant information regarding the special counsel's investigation, including the transcript and any recordings of the special counsel's interviews with President Biden in October of 2023. Now, to date, the Department of Justice has refused to provide the committee the audio recordings. It's a very simple request. It can be provided at any time, but maybe, just maybe, this administration that has tried to cover up so much and tried to physically lift up Joe Biden and keep him upright is hiding even more. So we just want to hear how that interview actually went. I am in favor of moving forward to hold Attorney General Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress. I think there are many other things that we need to have him in for and move forward on in holding him accountable. I mean, he's gone after so many American citizens, moms and dads who attend school board meetings, those of the Catholic faith. The DOJ has been completely weaponized, and it's very sad for our country. But this hearing will continue. We have many amendments. I'm sure there will be much dialogue. Hopefully, there is some decorum on both sides of the aisle. And if in my remaining 1 minute, I could request, every so often, Mr. Garcia, maybe you could just lift up that picture of our President Trump sleeping. As you say, I think he's praying. But if he is sleeping, he certainly looks pretty while he sleeps. Maybe it's an endearing moment of prayer, though. I know when I fall asleep on airplanes, my mouth kind of drops open, and his mouth is kind of tight-lipped. So maybe it's just a somber moment of
he's
thought.
sleeping. It's been reported by multiple press outlets.
I was in the courtroom today,
sleeping.
and I could see why someone would fall asleep, just like George Conway fell asleep today. In the court hearing. It's kind of slow in there. It's not as exciting as the House Oversight Committee, but I just wanted to say that's a lovely picture you have of President Trump, Mr. Garcia. Thank you. And I yield.